Just give it a moment. As a reminder, please mute yourself. Good afternoon. This is a hearing before the Boston Cannabis Board. Today is Wednesday, March 17th, 2021. Today's hearing is being conducted pursuant to certain temporary amendments to the open meeting law. That is what allows us to meet virtually. Today's hearing is being recorded and will be posted to the City of Boston's website. As a reminder, today's hearing is open to the public and the public is encouraged to attend. However, no additional testimony is accepted at this time. Before we begin with the agenda, I will introduce Chairwoman Kathleen Joyce.
Thank you, Leslie. Thank you everyone for joining us today. I'd like to welcome my fellow commissioners, Commissioner Lisa Holmes, Commissioner Darlene Lombos, Commissioner John Smith, and Commissioner Alejandro Sanquian.
Thank you. And with us, we also have our project manager, Jasmine Wynn.
Sorry, Jasmine, yes.
As a reminder, we will begin. I'll ask each of the commissioners for comments on the agenda item, beginning with the chairwoman. We will then return to the chairwoman for a motion. We'll discuss any questions on the motion, and I will ask if there is a second. Calling SAWF Estate LLC, the proposed license premise is 879 Blue Hill Avenue, Dorchester. This is an application for a retail recreational cannabis dispensary license with hours of operation of 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. This is a certified equity applicant. The date of initial application was May 27th, 2020. The date of filing with inspectional services was July 14th, 2020. And the date of the community meeting was November 30th, 2020. Chairwoman Joyce?
Thank you, Leslie. I do have a few comments. I thought this was a very strong application, and it's clear from every aspect of the proposal that the applicant is invested in his community. The diversity and inclusion goals are articulated, as well as through the partnering programs they've chosen. It's not just diversity in his hiring that stood out to me, but it's diversity in his contracts. I'd like to see some supplemental information from the applicant as to how they are going to measure these goals on a regular basis. And that plan should be submitted to the board should this license be granted. The applicant's plan for protecting youth from accessing the product really stood out to me. In the presentation, it was the very first bullet point under location, safety, and security, and I think that's very important. His parking plan is strong, and again demonstrates his commitment to reducing impacts on the neighborhood, of this type of business on the neighborhood. It's clear to me that he has a keen sense of the issues at this particular location, and his team has put together a plan that reflects those issues. He has a strong track record as being a good business person. His employment plan and his explanation of what he's trying to achieve stood out to me at the public hearing. I applaud his efforts to hire nonviolent drug offenders and he said on the record that not everyone in jail is a bad employee. I like to see that in our employers. And for those are about all the comments I have. It was a very strong application to me, and I just wanted to point out some of the things that stood out in his presentation.
Thank you. Commissioner Holmes, do you have comments?
I do. Very strong application. All the parties involved seem very dedicated. My only three major concerns I have is that corner location is really bad as far as congestion. And it's bad now at rush hour with buses, and when school buses come back around, it's tough. And the fact that they are directly across the street from not only the Sportsman's Tennis Club, but the Dorchester Boys and Girls Club. So I'd like to see a little bit more outreach with those two youth organizations, because they are vital to that area and they do a lot of work up there. They've just, they're in the process now of redoing Franklin Field, the field for Pop Warner and soccer for young people. And his establishment is going to be diagonally across the street from all these youth organizations. So I'd like to see a little bit more outreach, particularly to the Boys and Girls Club and Sportsman Tennis, who are vital to that area.
Thank you. Commissioner Lombos?
I don't have much to add. I agree with Chairwoman Joyce, strong application. I did want to just point out, I really appreciated in the employment plan, the lifting up of whistleblower policies and LPAs and things to really support workers and worker voice in the business plan. So I really appreciated that. I also do appreciate the deep roots in the community. This strong women, strong girls is something that my daughter's in, and I liked seeing that mentioned, and the emphasis on women and girls. So thank you, and I really like the application.
Thank you. Commissioner Smith?
Thank you, Leslie. Yeah, overall, I thought it was a great plan. And just sort of anecdotally, I visited the location and thought it was actually a really great location, but thought about, yeah, it is very close to parks and that kind of stuff. So echoing what Commissioner Holmes said. And then I also sort of, again, anecdotally visited two of the existing retail cannabis shops to look at sort of location, but also employment. And so I would advocate strongly to really make sure and really come back at some other point and talk to us about, you know, the people you're employing, you know, because the ones I visited, which I won't name, it doesn't really reflect, you know, what people are saying, that they're going to hire, you know, people of color and that kind of thing. So it's very interesting to sort of notice up close sort of the hiring practices. So I was impressed by you talked about having an internship program, and you talked about your first phase and second phase, and, you know, really being thoughtful about who you're bringing in and why and how. So would love to like continue to have that conversation down the road to actually see what it looks like around the metrics. But thank you so much for your presentation.
Thank you. Commissioner St.
Yes, not much to add after all my commissioners went, but I agree with everything that was said before me, and also noted the really strong job creation opportunity and ability to diversify the workforce in the cannabis industry, as this site having the opportunity to do that, given the couple the phases. And but it scored high for me on every single part of the scoring sheet. So really good.
Thank you. Chairwoman Joyce, do you have a motion?
Yes, having listened to what Commissioner Holmes pointed out, and I think that it's important that the applicant work with those two community groups. I also think this is an equity applicant that could also avail themselves of some of the technical assistance that might be able to help with some of the congestion there. I don't know if there's a solution, but we could connect them with people in the city. I still think it's a strong application. I would make a motion to grant this application conditioned upon their further and continued outreach with the Boys and Girls Club. And is it the Sportsman Tennis Club, Commissioner Holmes? So Leslie, would this be granting it, but we wouldn't issue it until they have those meetings and report back to us?
Exactly. So that it would be granting it, but as a condition of that grant, they have to continue working with those groups. The board has done that with some other establishments, and it allows them to go through the state process, but before issuance, we would ask for a full update on that. And we could do that administratively. And if there are any questions, we could move on from there.
Okay.
Are there any questions regarding the motion? Is there a second for the motion? Commissioner Holmes and Commissioner Lombos are all in favor?
Aye.
None opposed. This will be granted conditionally, and we will also connect the applicant as an equity applicant with technical assistance.
Thank you all.
Calling Holland Brands SB LLC. The proposed license premise is 115 K Street, also known as 538 East First Street. This is an application for a retail recreational cannabis dispensary license with proposed hours of operation Monday through Saturday, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. and Sunday, 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. This is a non-equity applicant. The date of the initial application was April 2nd, 2019. The date of filing with Inspectional Services was July 2nd, 2019. And the date of the community meeting was January 29th, 2020. Chairwoman Joyce?
Thanks, Leslie. I'll begin with some of my comments. I thought this application had a strong diversity inclusion plan, and want to point out that they've made a commitment that 50% of the contracts that exceed $25,000 will be minority and women-owned businesses. I would like to ask that they submit those updates to the board on an annual basis. I also want to point out their employment plan for hiring minorities and women has increased since their initial application, which I'd like to see. To me, that demonstrates the applicant is willing to work and to fine tune their application and their operations with the community and with the board. And I'm looking forward to learning more about their peer-to-peer mentorship program. This applicant is invested in the success of this business. Their employees, they're offering legal aid for expungement of criminal records. They're also invested, it's clear throughout the application, in being a good neighborhood partner. I do want to note we've received a lot of opposition, but I also want to point out that this area voted 63.5% for the legalization of marijuana. There is significant opposition still coming in, but there's also significant support, and I counted more than 189 letters of support, as well as a petition that included over 70 signatures from South Boston residents. Community feedback and support of elected officials and constituents, and 20% of what the board may consider pursuant to the ordinance. When we cite these establishments, I look to among other things, the potential impacts and the quality of life of residents and the businesses in the immediate area, and the steps that this applicant or the applicant has taken and proposes to take. I think this is a good location. This applicant has done a significant amount of work, including a traffic study and multiple meetings with the community. I don't know where the comments that come in that say that they haven't worked with the community, that they have provided evidence of dates and people that they've met with for the last several years. I'm confident that their proposal adequately addresses the concerns expressed by the opposition. And additionally, the applicant has made it clear that they're committed to continuing to work with the community. I think some members of the applicant team are meeting with members of the community this week. And it's clear to me that they will continue to respond to future concerns. I also want to acknowledge for the record the supplemental letter from Attorney Ross that we received after the hearing. And specifically, Attorney Ross points out that this process began more than 2 years ago, in the number and types of community meetings that his team had with various stakeholders. That's what I wanted to mention. And to address what Councilor Flaherty here brought up at the hearing, it's important to make clear that we do not get involved in private mitigation contracts between an applicant and the community. Those are private contracts that the board does not get involved in. What we do get involved in, what we can collect, is 3% of sales annually from the operator. And the 3% that we collect, that money must be applied to mitigation efforts in the immediate area of the cannabis establishment. That is what the city can collect. No city, no municipality legally can take or advocate for additional funds from a cannabis establishment. It's very common for businesses of all types to enter into these agreements with the community regarding additional mitigation efforts, but those are private agreements and we will not be getting involved in them. So those are my comments. All in all, I think it's a great location. I think it's a very strong application.
Thank you. Commissioner Holmes?
Basically, I echo what the chairwoman said. You're always going to have opposition in neighborhoods from people about what businesses open up, whether it's a cannabis establishment, whether it's a liquor store, whether it's something else that somebody just doesn't want in their backyard. But this business, this group has done significant work in putting in the time and effort to take those things into consideration. And again, I think it's a very strong application. The location, the building is pretty much self-contained, so they have plenty of parking. They're actually offering parking, which I know in that neighborhood is primarily everybody's biggest problem. So to offer night parking in an area where on-street parking is pretty rare, I think is a plus. So strong application, and I'm pleased with what they put forward.
Thank you. Commissioner Lombas?
Yeah, thank you again. I do agree with the fellow commissioners here. It is always hard though for us to see opposition, hear it in public testimony. It really does weigh heavily. And so that's why we have these score sheets. Again, I got to go back to the score sheet because it is only a portion of it. And I really do count on the other commissioners' area of expertise I really do listen to Chairwoman Joyce about her experience with licensing, and Commissioner Holmes with all her experience with the safety and security and location, and Commissioner Sanguian and all of her work around public health, and then obviously Commissioner Smith with his extensive community organizing connections, deep connections with the community. So we all have our level of expertise. I know that, and we bring to the board what we can, we contribute to it. And it is hard to hear opposition, and it does weigh. So they did have a lower score for me on the community feedback and public support. That is clear, but the other sections did have pretty high scores, and just wanted to point that out. I thought it was, again, agree with our fellow commissioners here. It's a good application. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Smith?
Thank you, Leslie. And thanks, Chairwoman Joyce. I would echo a lot of what you said. And also, I think there were a lot of quality of life issues, which I don't think we can get around so much. I mean, again, in terms of driving around, I drove through that area and realized it's really close to like the UPS. It's a really light industrial area with lots of traffic. And I thought, okay, so there are different quality of life issues around here. That building that I saw where I think they're going to put, it's pretty self-contained versus some of the others. I know they just cited one just opened over the weekend in Jamaica Plain on Center Street, right next to Whole Foods, literally right on the corner. So I think these issues will come up. We will have to address them as they come up. And I think as long as they're committed to continuing to work with the community that's being built up in that area, you know, and their commitment to the hiring plan that they laid out and their community engagement, I think we will, I'm comfortable, you know, seeing it go forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Sanguian?
Thank you so much. I agree with my fellow commissioners, and especially with Commissioner Lambos on the issue of community support, and that, you know, that level of opposition definitely does weigh on our decision, but it is a part of the entire scoring sheet. I did want to recognize a suggestion made by someone who testified about perhaps us doing a better job of explaining the process, like once they go through our board, then, you know, through the licensing, because I think they are going to, you know, this applicant is going to go through some significant zoning considerations where people can, again, you know, voice their opinion. And, you know, just looking on the website, and it does, if you go through and you look as if you're a business that's trying to establish, you see what the process is. But I wonder if we, you know, maybe do a small reminder at the beginning of public testimony to say, you know, we'll have the hearing and then they'll go through zoning. And I just think because it's so new that it's important that people feel like they fully understand the process. And I heard that loud and clear from a number of people who testified. And so, and even, you know, the scoring sheets, knowing what's on the scoring sheets and what the percentage of each is. So, but overall, in terms of the application itself, I also thought it was a strong application. I also thought it, you know, the building, the size, the self-containment was something that worked really well. Their diversity plan, I thought, was extremely impressive. And the people that they have leading that charge are those that fully confident they'll be able to implement them. But overall, a strong application. But I did want to see if there was some way that we could maybe offer a little more information during the initial hearings before testimony.
Absolutely, Commissioner. And we actually held at Commissioner Lombos' suggestion, the first of a series of informational sessions. We held it yesterday, and you'll be getting the link with the recording. We didn't know what to expect, but it was actually very productive. And thank you to Jasmine and Shayla White for participating. And it was just an opportunity for applicants to ask us questions and community members. So we actually put together a slide deck as well, and we'll be sharing that. I did turn off the chat function because we're not accepting testimony. There was a comment in the chat function before I turned it off about this applicant working with the community. I do want to make clear that all of both the opposition and support are public record. We received files of about approximately 180 letters of support in addition to opposition. So that's all public record, just like the score sheet. So anyone can ask for that at any time. But just a reminder, I did turn off the chat because we're not taking public comment. And so with that, I'll return to Chairwoman Joyce for a motion.
Thanks. And I do just want to repeat that there was significant support as well. It may have seemed lopsided as the emails came in because the support came in one electronic file. So all that taking into consideration in what's been presented to us at the last hearing and what we've talked about today, I make a motion to grant this applicant a license.
Are there any questions on the motion? Seeing none, do we have a second?
Second.
Commissioner Sankian, all in favor?
Aye.
And
Aye.
there are none opposed. Thank you. Calling Legal Greens LLC. The proposed license premise is 693 Dudley Street in Dorchester. This is an application for a recreational cannabis dispensary license. The hours of operation would be 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. This is a certified equity applicant. The date of the initial application was May 14th, 2019. The date of filing with Inspectional Services was June 25th, 2019. And the date of the community meeting was September 4th, 2019. This applicant does have a buffer zone conflict. It is located within a half mile of an existing establishment. This matter was previously deferred to allow the applicant to access technical assistance through the Office of Economic Development. Chairwoman Joyce?
Thanks, Leslie. A couple of things with this application. I think what we saw last week presented was much improved, and I think deferring them to technical assistance was very helpful. I think it was a stronger application. I'm taking a look at this and the fact that they are equity, and this is also in a buffer zone, and the fact that they haven't had a public meeting since 2019. And I only saw one letter of support. I saw a whole bunch of form letters with 3 or 4 sentences and people's addresses that weren't even in the neighborhood submitted. And to me, that doesn't mean it's not a good application. To me, that means they need another public meeting. They need to continue to work with the neighborhood. I still think that this could benefit from some more work. And I'd like to see them reach out to the community some more.
Thank you. And I apologize. I should have noted that Commissioner Smith recused himself from this portion of the meeting, last meeting, and is recused from today's vote. Commissioner Holmes?
I agree with the chairwoman. I think there needs to be a little bit more work within the community, not only because of the buffer zone, but just as she said, the last meeting was in 2019. Chain letters don't really do it for me. I'd like to see some real remarks from people who actually abut the business, who live in that neighborhood, who can tell us what that personal impact is going to be for them. So I just think they need to do a little bit more work. Other than that, I think they're great. They just need to do a little bit more community outreach.
Thank you. Commissioner Lambos?
Thank you. Yeah, I really like the applicants. I really I'm cheering them on. We wanted them to get some technical assistance. I think they did that. I really want to see them succeed here. They have some really good aspirational goals. Like I said, it's strong in that way. I think it is, for me, it actually is the buffer zone, because we're supposed to be really having a higher bar in some ways. We're supposed to be really, at least from my perspective. And so I wanted to score really high on some of them, on the employment, on the DEI. But I really think that it would be great to see a little bit more substance on some of those. Really great goals though, and aspirational. And so just wanted to reiterate the my interest in really seeing this business succeed and seeing if there's a way to get them stronger on some of those things.
Thank you. Commissioner St. Kian?
Yeah, I agree with my fellow commissioners. I thought there were some people who provided testimony and support. I think there are about 5 people who provided testimony and support at the actual hearing, and I do want to recognize, that sometimes it's hard to get people in the middle of the day, but or even to send letters who have very busy lives, but that it is something that is extremely important and on the onus of the person seeking to get the establishment to do that. So even when that's difficult, is something that's hugely important and something that we looked to. And also in terms of just the higher standard of it being in the buffer zone, the importance that all of the elements that are part of the application are really fully fledged out, and that we're able to, with confidence, know that they're succeed, because we really want, we want their success. So yeah, but overall, definitely an improvement, huge improvement, but there could be a little bit more.
Thank you. And for the record, before we return to the chairwoman, as a certified equity applicant, they can still continue to access funds and technical assistance. Chairwoman Joyce?
Leslie, can you explain to me what deferring would do versus rejecting it without prejudice?
Absolutely. So this, as discussed, this was deferred originally. Deferring would simply, until the applicant decided that they had done more work to come back for us, would simply just kind of move it down the line. Rejecting without prejudice would allow the applicant to reapply at any time, but would actually trigger that community process requirement. And because this is a certified equity applicant, they don't go to the bottom of the queue in terms of scheduling. Once they had completed that, going through the community process, they would be put back on for the next agenda.
Okay, thank you. Based on your explanation, I make a motion to reject this application without prejudice.
Are there any questions on the motion?
Just to be clear, that would trigger another community meeting, which is
Yes, it
one of the, okay,
Yes, that's the reason why I
Yes.
think that's important.
got it. Okay, thank you.
All right.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
So this has been rejected without prejudice. Again, that allows the applicant to reapply at this site at any time or at any other site. Calling Pure Oasis LLC. The licensed premise is 430 Blue Hill Avenue, Dorchester. This is an existing recreational cannabis dispensary license with current hours of operation from 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. And the applicant is seeking to extend its hours of operation to 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. Chairwoman Joyce?
I have no issues with this. I make a motion to grant the extension of the hours.
Does anyone else have any comments, or is there a second? We have a second. All in favor? And none opposed. Thank you. Those are all the items before the board today. Thank you to the chairwoman and the commissioners, and thank you for everyone else who participated. Have a good day.